his top 10 reasons why Donald Trump's slush fund is unconstitutional. And leading off our discussion tonight is Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman Raskin, before we get to your top 10 reasons, and we are going to get to all 10, I'd like you to comment on the judge's motion to this judge, and then that the notion that Rule 60 here could be the crucial lever for the judge in this case to use.
Well, it was a true act of public service on behalf of these former judges to step forward to say that this would truly be a fraud, not just on the court, but on the country to let this go through. And Trump knew that he was about to lose that case as the judge had called for a hearing on May 20th as to the question of whether or not it was a collusive lawsuit. And then when he could read the writing on the wall, they pulled out of the suit and then engineered their collusive, fraudulent settlement on the country. So now the judges are saying the judge should just reopen the case, as she's got the power to do, bring it back, nullify this fraudulent settlement, and put an end to the whole charade at this point.
All right, Professor, the top 10 reasons why the Trump slush fund is unconstitutional. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I should say most of the country isn't necessarily familiar with the way law school exams are written, but most of them are written in sort of a fantastical fact pattern, and then the law students have to scramble to identify all the issues to show what was wrong. And I saw this slush fund and I said, this is the greatest issue spotter of all time, with constitutional law issues, with federal courts issues, with legal ethics, tax, and everything. But start with this. Article 1 says that Congress has the power to pass laws and appropriate money. Only Congress. And yet this is an attempt to appropriate $1.776 billion by the president. And by the way, if it's this number, why not $1.776 trillion? I mean, there's no limit if the president can just make it up as he goes along. It's got nothing to do with an actual verdict against the United States. So there's number one. Number two is courts decide cases. The attorney general and the president, they don't decide cases, and yet they're having people coming forward to advance their claims about lawfare and about weaponization, which are defined nowhere in federal law or state law. And it's not up to courts to decide the case. It's going to be up to these 5 people, or 3 of the 5, the quorum, totally reporting to Donald Trump. So that's a violation of Article 3 of the Constitution. Section 4 of the 14th Amendment, this is an interesting one, says that neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt that is arising from rebellion or insurrection against the United States. But obviously that's the primary purpose here, is to pay off the disgruntled Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and insurrectionists who only got a pardon for their violent attacks on the police and their attempts to overthrow and put down the U.S. government. They want money too. And so Donald Trump has been searching for a way to do that, but it does violate the 14th Amendment. Now, as you were pointing out a moment ago, all of this is money that goes to Donald Trump and must be going to Donald Trump. If he decides to make them the third-party beneficiaries of his settlement, so be it. But this is money going to him. But it can't go to him because of the Domestic Emoluments Clause, which says that the president is limited to his own official salary in office and may not draw any other money from the federal government or from the states, for that matter. So it violates the Domestic Emoluments Clause. So there's the top 4 right there. But then we can also get into what's wrong with the underlying settlement of the case. Well, first of all, his cause of action was about this guy, Charles Littlejohn, who was a private IRS contractor who's in prison now because he did leak some of Donald Trump's tax returns that Trump had promised he would release. But of course, everyone knew he wasn't going to release them, and they should not have been released, which is why Littlejohn is in prison right now. Other people in a similar situation to Donald Trump who've had their data leaked by an independent private contractor working for the government have tried to sue the federal government, and every case has resulted in a ruling that there is no private right of action against the federal government in such a case. The Attorney General, Todd Blanche, Trump's former private lawyer, never raised this as defense, but engaged in this collusive settlement instead of just saying, no, we don't owe this to you, and we've got black letter law on that. That's a clear precedent. So that's one reason why that suit was totally fraudulent and doomed to fail. The other was it was late. He had 2 years within which to bring it before losing to the statute of limitations, and he brought it many months after the statute of limitations had expired. And yet Todd Blanche nonetheless went ahead and tried to settle the suit, getting it away from the court in that case, instead of standing up for the United States.
So please explain to me, what are the damages when a president's tax return, by the way, it wasn't his full tax return, a piece of a president's tax return, is made public, given that every other president during Donald Trump's adulthood has made his tax returns public on the day they filed them?
Well, and he, of course, had promised to do it. Nonetheless, I've got it. That was a violation when the guy released it, but he was prosecuted. And Trump's people were behind the prosecution. They supported the prosecution. And nobody else in Trump's position has ever been able to engage in a private right of action, a lawsuit against the government from which he or she has drawn money. It just doesn't exist. But Trump, instead of saying, you know what, we should change the law so anybody should have a right to sue in that case, no, he just wants to try to override the precedent and have a special law for himself. And that's the basic problem with all of this. You know, there are a lot of people who feel like the government has been weaponized against them recently, including colleges, universities, law firms, James Comey, Letitia James, Adam Schiff. We can name lots of people who feel like there's been weaponization against them. Why not actually have a discussion about passing a federal law that would allow people in a situation like that to go and sue? No, instead, they've got to break every law we've got, violate the Constitution, and say this is for people who are victims of so-called Democrat weaponization of the law. And it's completely outside of our constitutional order. And by the way, if they can do $1.776 billion, they just make that up out of a hat because it matches the 250th anniversary of the country. Why not $1.776 trillion or zillion dollars? They could just bankrupt the country if they've got the right to do this. That's why it's up to Congress exclusively to appropriate money. So as a member of Congress, I come back to that as the original sin of this whole chain of constitutional violations.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
You bet.
Thank you. And after this break, Senator Cory Booker will join us.